Hello, and thank you for tuning back in with That Will Never Work podcast. I am your host, Maurice, and thank you very much for all your love and support. Today, we're going to talk about elevator pitch. How in the world do I keep people interested in what I'm doing? You need to have an elevator pitch that's going to not just introduce yourself, but captivate. But before we get into that, and that's going to be a whole series, what is an elevator pitch? And what are the elements of one, you may ask? So some of you may look at some of these business shows and you hear what they're talking about. You might look at something like Shark Tank or I can't think of his name that comes on after Shark Tank. Lemonis, Lemonis. I can't think of his first name. I can't think of the show. But you hear people talk about your elevator pitch. What are you trying to sell? Things like that. Well, sometimes your pitch could be too selly. It can be too not captivating enough, things like that. But do you truly understand what the elevator pitch really is? So here is the definition of an elevator pitch, or what it should be. Your pitch should be a short recap of who you are and what you do. The preference will be for you to be as persuasive as possible. And even though it's short, it should be compelling enough to spark the listener's interest in your idea, organization, or background. And also be sure to share your skills. So in that, do you have really who you really are and what you're trying to do and or accomplish? Do you truly understand that? Do you have a true identity of where you're trying to go? Do you have a true understanding of the problem you're trying to solve with your organization, with your idea? And how does your background solve and or your idea solve the problem? So here's a way for you to write your elevator pitch, and you can follow some of these steps to help you get started. And then as you say it more frequently, as you test it out on different people, different situations, or yourself in the mirror, you'll become better, and you'll be able to get it down small enough and concise enough to make sure you win that person over. So, how to write an elevator pitch. You can start by introducing yourself. Now, in introducing yourself, do you truly understand, again, who you are and what you're doing? Do you understand how your background, your education, your former jobs make the person that you are today? Provide a summary of what you do. That's number 2. Provide a summary of what you do. What is it that you do? Are you clear on that? Are you an expert or not? And I'm not saying to you write that in your pitch, but be as firm of where you are and where you stand for that summary to be as strong as possible. Enough to convince someone, even if you don't feel comfortable in it yourself, Just make sure that you are comfortable enough or convincing enough for someone to hear what your summary of what you do is compelling, that they want to hear more about it. Explain what you want. Also, do you understand yourself? What is it that you want to accomplish? And first of all, what is the problem? And then, what is it that you want? Are you asking for money? Are you asking for the opportunity to take that job? Are you looking for a grant? What is it that you want to do and get that done? Finish with a call to action. Again, how are you finding out what the problem is? What is it that you want? And how are you going to make that happen? And then what's that time frame? Make sure that in this you take your time in explaining it and talking about it. But at the same time, be sure that you are very clear and concise, because you only have a short amount of time. First impressions mean a lot. And that's the one thing that I've learned in this. First impressions mean a lot. And sometimes you need to understand that you don't have a lot of time, especially those persons that are always running. They're running from meeting to meeting, and you don't know, as you're stepping into that elevator, if you're coming across a Bill Gates, a Warren Buffett, a Byron Allen, you're not sure who you're coming across, that you only have this 30 seconds to tell them who you are, what you're doing, what you want, and how you plan to fulfill that action, that need. Do you have that prepared? That's why it's best for you to take your time. Take your time and practice it as much as you can. Because in most cases, time is of the essence. But in that, do not try to make yourself robotic, meaning try to make it as conversational as possible. Again, being relaxed, being confident. And because if you're confident enough in it, you should be able to take that deep breath without anyone really noticing, and being able to sell, quote unquote, what's going on. Now, it should not come off as a sales pitch per se, but just enough that, hey, for them to say, hey, I really want to know what's going on. I would love to schedule a meeting with you next week. Oh, wow. You know what? Next week is not going to be good enough. We need to do it later on today. I want you to practice that elevator pitch frequently, as often as you can. That makes sense, on everyone that you can. And you can talk to the stranger in Walmart and practice your elevator pitch. You can just talk to someone in the line behind you and just like, hey, you see these grapes here? Wow. It would be nice if I had this farm, that I had this farm, and, we do grapes, and, whatever the situation might be, the issue might be cost. And he's like, hey, we're a local farm, and we could grow it and ship it right here to this particular place for, cheaper. Or whether it's clothes or baked goods to the local markets, things like that. What is the solution? What is the problem? And how do you fulfill that solution? Also, one of the things that I do believe we tend to fall into in our particular industries, sometimes we use niche words and phrases that sometimes other persons in other industries do not know what they are and don't understand what they are and what they mean. So I would just recommend that maybe you don't do something like that, or if you do, make it so that it's in a context that people, the general person, would kind of get an idea of it. They can assume what it is unless you explain it in your elevator pitch. But try to make it so that people can truly understand what's going on, and make sure that your pitch is somewhat universal, so others can truly understand. They can get it immediately without having to use a dictionary, a thesaurus, finding a synonym for any words that you're using. I'm not asking you to or suggesting that you use words that are from a first, second, or third grade level, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just try to make sure that it's as intelligible as possible, and that people can really catch on to it. And last but not least, and I've been saying this the whole time, express confidence. You need to show how confident you really are in a product and or service you're providing. It's not easy, especially if it's your first time. You could be a little nervous, and sometimes people could pick up on that. But make sure that you express confidence. Now, you say, Maurice, how confident are you? Well, it's taken over 8 years. I started Chisholm Group LLC in 2012. I was not very confident at that time, and having to create an elevator pitch over these years, it has changed. I can't tell you how many times. In my elevator pitch, it differs for who I'm talking to at that moment, because my particular products and services, there is my range is quite large, and my connections vary from industry to industry. So I can talk to a for-profit or non-profit. I can talk to a Fortune 500 or a church. So there are times where I utilize that particular moment for different conversations. Because of the type of person I am, I feel as though I can talk to almost any and everybody. I have a lot of resources, and a lot of times as I'm speaking to someone, I'm able to have such a diverse conversation. I can not only talk to them about services that I provide, but a lot of times I keep other people in mind at the same time. So what sells me, which may not sell you, but what sells me is that I have other resources where not only are you getting me, but you're getting my friends, my partners, my associates, other businesses and opportunities that ultimately gets the job done. Along with those that may specialize in a certain area that I may not specialize in, but I have the resources to get it done. So those are some other things that you might need to consider as you're talking to people. Understanding what your limitations are. Again, understand who you are. Understand what your resources are. Who's in your network. And will they also benefit you moving forward? So as you're creating your elevator pitch, keep in mind that if you grow apples on a tree, but this particular baker not just want the apples, but they don't have time to really create the apple pie 100%. Do you know a baker? So now you're creating that chain where everyone, quote unquote, is eating. Everyone is benefiting from a service that you may have provided. So I would love for you to take your elevator pitch, practice it, practice on someone, take some classes if need be, read a book on public speaking, whatever it might be, educate yourself on that. Do some Google searches, but understand that you need to, number one, start by introducing yourself. Number two, provide a summary of what you do. Number three, explain what you want. And number four, finish with a call to action. I thank y'all very much for listening to me today. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe That Will Never Work podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, iTunes, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, and various other platforms. Just be sure to share on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I would love for y'all to really be a part of this CG community. I thank y'all very much and have a great day. Peace.